Welcome. You have landed in the year 2014. This is only our second YouTube video. You're probably not going to know a lot about what's going on here or why we're in 2014 or why there's only one redeemed Roadrunner here and our name implies plural, Roadrunners. All that's in the first video. So if you missed it and would like to see it, there's a little link above for you to go back and look at it if you want to. Here's a quick recap though. Steve, my other half, and me are 74 and 75 years old. We have been traveling part-time 4 to 6 months out of the year now for 9 years, since 2017. And we're just now starting a YouTube channel. Crazy, huh? But I'm Rose. I am the Roadrunner that was still working a full-time job in 2014. I was having lunch one day with my coworkers and that lottery question came up. I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you, but it's, what would you do if you won the lottery? Well, I knew exactly what I would do. I would buy an RV and we'd hit the road. And I knew that because Steve and I were actually working on making that happen. So we would have a camper and and it would be ready to go in 2017 when I retired. But first there was research to be done. Fortunately, Steve was retired, so he had plenty of time to do all this research. We weren't totally newbies. We've owned RVs over the years. We've had a motorhome, we had a travel trailer, we even had a pop-up one time back in the day. So, but this is going to be different. We're going to live in this thing for months at a time. So we wanted to do all the considerations and make sure that what we got was going to really work for us. So Steve started searching online, looking at A's, B's, C's, D's. Sorry, there's no D's. That's the fifth wheel. And we started going to RV shows so we could get a better visual of the insides of them. And all this research that he did really paid off. It actually helped us make our first decision. We wanted a Class A motorhome. It seemed most convenient for us. I could get up and go to the bathroom when I needed to without stopping, grab us a snack. When we did stop, we wouldn't have to get out of the truck and go around and get in the camper if it was raining outside or something. We also were going to be traveling with 2 cats and a dog, and it just seemed the best idea for us to be able to keep an eye on them as we were going down the road. So what's next? We started discussing gas versus diesel. Obviously, gas would be less expensive for the fuel and the maintenance. Diesel would already have that as a con on their side. However, diesel would get better gas mileage and it would probably have a lot more power. So because of the power thing, I think we were leaning a little towards the diesel, but it wasn't set in concrete. We knew we were going to have to buy used. So the next thing we did was go out and start looking at campers that were sale around us. We looked at one time. We drove 150 miles to the next state over and looked at this camper there, and I really liked that camper. The layout of it was different than the other ones we had looked at. Downside was it had been owned by a smoker, a very heavy smoker. Everything in that thing from ceiling to bottom was yellowed with nicotine. And we thought, you know what it would cost to clean or replace all of that? So that was a no-go. And for the condition of it, the dealer sure had a nice price on it. So another time we drove 150 miles the other direction. We looked at one for sale by an individual, and we found that the slide didn't work. He had had a water problem that damaged the floor a little bit in one place, and it still wasn't back up to par. You know, he didn't get back to normal. So that was another waste of gas and time. So nothing really suited us. So when we found one, oh, then we found one in Florida, 800 miles from us. And we did all our due diligence, asking questions of the dealer, asking for pictures, you name it. And we had a little advantage with this one. We had a relative that lived close to the dealer, and they went over for us and did a hands-on walkthrough and got back to us over the phone and showed us what it looked like and everything. And it looked pretty good. So Steve hops on a plane. He goes to Florida. And even though it did have the rubber roof and the fiberglass siding. So he gets there and he walks through and he calls me and he says, well, it all looks okay. He says, until he stepped in front of the kitchen sink and the floor weakened under his foot. And the worst part of that was the dealer had tried to cover it up with a throw rug. And I guess our relative did not step in that particular spot. But, you know, he had that rug just thrown over there to cover the whole thing up. And we were like, how dishonest can you get? And that ended that. And Proverbs 6 says that God hates liars. And so do we. So he comes on back to Virginia where we live. And the whole process was not lost, though. We learned some things about the campers. I mentioned it had a rubber roof and fiberglass. Most of the campers we looked at did. Some of them that we looked at, the rubber roof was already coming away from the wood. I mean, it's just glued down on a piece of wood. And as that glue dries, it can start coming up. And if you have to replace that roof, my goodness, it's expensive. So we weren't a big fans of the rubber roofs. And then many of them had delamination already started on the fiberglass on the outsides. So we weren't a real big fan of that either. But as soon as he gets back from Florida, he starts looking for the build. He looked at all the brands to see how they were built. And he came across a model or a brand, Holiday Rambler, and found out it had aluminum roof, not one piece, it was two pieces, but it was all aluminum. The sides were all aluminum, and that was very appealing to us. So he started looking more into the Holiday Rambler and found out they had a 32-foot motorhome. That was extremely appealing to Steve because he didn't want a 36-foot from the get-go. And from the specs, we looked at the specs, and I said, well, you're only losing 4 foot, but that can make a big difference in a camper. And it didn't seem to have lost any of the space that was in the 36-footers. So now the search was on for a 32-foot Holiday Rambler Class A motorhome. It was more difficult than we thought because there weren't many out there for sale. And then we had a budget to keep up with too. You know, we had to stay within our budget. And it seemed like forever passed and he never found one. And then one day I came home from work and he says, I found one. And I was all excited until he told me where it was. It was on eBay, 2,300 miles from us. I mean, we can't even look at this thing. But I looked at it and I humored him and looked at the pictures. I read the descriptions. It was listed by a small truck and diesel company in Phoenix, Arizona. They dabbled with RVs now and then. There were good reviews on past sales that they had done. Price was a little higher than what we wanted to pay. And, you know, we had been saving, and I'm a big budget person, and we had been saving so we could pay cash for this thing. So that's all said and done. It's now discussion time. And then we did it. We put in a bid. Remember in the last video I told you that starting a YouTube channel at our age was not the first crazy thing we've ever done? This was the first crazy thing we've ever done. Put in a bid on eBay for a camper 2,300 miles from us, sight unseen. Crazy. But we also were not very hopeful. The bid we put in was a few $1,000s less than the reserve that the seller had placed on the auction, which simply means he didn't have to sell it if he didn't get that much for it. So we weren't very hopeful about getting it, but we said, hey, let's see what happens. So now we wait. It's in God's hands. If it's his will for us, it'll happen. If it's not, we keep looking. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and y'all come back next time to see how this thing works out.